This is Oddysay. Today we'll be taking a look at the Aeons from Final Fantasy X. We'll be breaking down their character designs and looking at the silhouettes and shape language, as well as introducing a few new topics in terms of improving your character design using narrative and shape hierarchy. Now, before we get into the design of an Aeon, let's figure out what exactly an Aeon is. In Final Fantasy X, Aeons are beings that were once human, that gave up their souls in order to become powerful entities. They live forever trapped in that stone, only to be called upon by a summoner. In our world, Aeons are entities that resembles the passage of time. That is perhaps the correlation between our Aeons and the inspiration for the Final Fantasy X Aeon. Now, a lot of people ask why. Why exactly should we study the Aeons of Final Fantasy X? I believe if you're an aspiring character designer, the first and best thing that you could do is to expand your knowledge on shapes and how shapes work together by looking at different silhouettes. Final Fantasy X has a wide range of silhouettes that go from highly exaggerated to extremely realistic, depending on who you're looking at. That's where we could learn from. Now let's take a look at the oddest Aeons of Final Fantasy X. We're going to begin with the Mega Sisters, who appear as a trio of 3 girls. Now pay attention to each of their unique traits and powerful shapes that they represent. The round one is called Cindy, the sharper one is called Sandy, and the smallest one is called Mindy. Notice how each of them have an extremely different silhouette, different overall shapes, yet they're all tied together due to the insect archetype theme. Cindy comes off as round and jolly, Sandy comes off as sharp and dangerous, and Mindy comes off as stubborn and annoying because of her square-like shape. And that's our introduction into shape harmony. If silhouettes are key, then shape harmony is the door. Now let's get into one of my favorite Aeons, Anima, who features not only an extremely complex silhouette, but also amazing details, which means that the devil is in the details. We'll have to take a close look at Anima to figure out what the character designers were trying to tell us when they designed it. Always ask why. Why is Anima wrapped around a Venus flytrap? And why is its arms bounded? And why is it a symbol of asceticism, which is a state of extreme self-discipline? Basically, looks like it's deprived and starving, or even diseased. For those of you that know the lore of Final Fantasy X, you know why. X, Yojimbo. Fun fact, Yojimbo actually translates to bodyguard, hence why his shapes are so imposing and powerful. In terms of his shapes and silhouettes, Yojimbo has 3 key shapes: a square for his shoulders, triangles to his feet, and lastly is the circles by his shoulder pads, which is the last thing that the player notices. This is called shape hierarchy. In which order do you see and recognize the shapes? Now let's get into one of the final topics of this video, the final Aeon of Final Fantasy X. The final Aeon is a lesson in how you can combine assets from different characters to fuel the story, and of course change the overall silhouette of a character. This is Jet's silhouette. Same character, different pose, and they both share the same assets, featuring the giant sword, the spikes on his back, and the spikes coming out of his pelvis. He wasn't born with those spikes coming out of his pelvis and his shoulder, but they actually these spikes are actually plots from Lord Braska's in terms of where he got them from on the right, that were exaggerated and monsterized to become part of Jet when he became the final Aeon, and could be exaggerated even more for when he became Sin. Now on to the last topic of the video, the unknown Aeon called Lord Xeon, whom we never got to see as an Aeon. Notice his shapes and his cape, and how that plays into his overall silhouette. What kind of weapon would you give him? A sword, an axe, or a spear? And how would you design him as an Aeon? And that's my challenge for you, to design Lord Xeon as an Aeon. Keep in mind his shapes and his silhouette, and the key is to keep it consistent. Like, comment, and subscribe. We got a lot more coming.